Welcome back to another edition of the Knight Report podcast. I'm your host, Mike Broadbent. Joining me once again is my co-host, Richie O'Leary. Another commitment to discuss. I deemed it as the most talented player Rutgers has ever landed in the transfer portal, and that is former James Madison and Long Island University defensive end Eric O'Neill, who absolutely lit the world on fire this past year. Went viral for his celebrations in the bowl game that James Madison played in this year. We'll get into what he brings as a player, how this commitment came together, and everything involved to get him on the banks. But first, this podcast is presented to you by Knight and Day Apparel. Hey, Rutgers fans, get ready to slam dunk your style this season with Knight and Day Apparel. Cheer on your Scarlet Knights this basketball season in our exclusive Rutgers gear. From trend-setting designs to lifestyle garments, we've got you covered with everything you need to support your team in comfort and flair. Stand out in the crowd and show your passion for Rutgers basketball with designs that celebrate every dribble, dunk, and victory. Use our promo code RutgersRivals to get 10% off your purchase. Don't wait. Head to Knight and Day Apparel today and gear up for game day. Go Knights. We are also presented to you by BetOnline. BetOnline continues to be the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting. From the earliest odds to live in-game betting, BetOnline has you covered with everything and provides you with the ability to watch games as they happen. With the largest selection of odds from everything from football, the NBA, college basketball, NHL, and UFC. Head to BetOnline today, and don't forget to use our promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for your welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, the game starts here. So Eric O'Neill has long been a huge target for this program and long been in kind of like dog years, portal years since, basically since he entered the portal about a week ago, maybe a little bit longer. We've been abuzz because you were hearing almost immediately like, this sounds like it's going to happen. And then we had about the most tense week in portal edge of our seat that I can think of. Yeah. Is he coming? Is he not? Hearing other schools are involved. Let's just talk about how he ended up here, and then we'll get into who he is as a player. So talk about what happened with the Eric O'Neill journey to Rutgers from the time he entered the portal to now.
So he visited on the 20th, the last day before the dead, or second to last day before the dead period.
It was the 28th, I think, right?
Was it the 28th? I thought it was the 20th.
Maybe it was the 20th. You might be right. Sorry.
Yeah, because the 22nd was the dead period starts.
Okay.
So he sneaked in as soon as he entered. He snuck in a little quick visit to Rutgers. Got there, went to campus, checked everything out. Wanted to go to Rutgers originally in the portal last season. Now I've said this a couple times now if you've listened to the pod, but I'll say it again. Last season, they had Wesley Bailey, Aaron Lewis, Jordan Thompson, a bunch of other guys on that offensive or defensive line. So they didn't really need a defensive end. Now, looking back, you probably should have took him. But it also...
Yeah. And he was a guy that we were standing on the table for that they should be going after him. Local kid, just absolutely dominated for 2 straight years. The NEC Player of the Year on defense.
Yeah.
First team All-American in the FCS level. Like, there was really no excuse for not going after this kid last year.
Yeah, I agree. But you know what? He got FBS experience. You got to see him. Hey, I probably would have started a lot this year, actually, based on the injuries at defensive end.
He would have been starting by, in my opinion, game 1. Like,
yeah, I could see it. But then you probably also piss off one of your other defensive ends. So it is what it is. I know. Looking back, you can't look back too much, but whatever. They got him now. Went to campus, started looking into other visits after visiting Rutgers. He had the whole intention was to enter the portal and end up at Rutgers. He wanted to do that last year, didn't work out. This year, it started to work out. Then his phone absolutely blew up. It was like, I think the final number was 41 or 42 schools reached out, which is pretty notable for anyone that enters the portal. But the kid was a freak last year, did just about everything, and then exploded in the bowl game as well. Kind of went viral a little bit, which is fine. He's probably not going to be doing that bow and arrow celebration anytime soon, if I had to guess, under Shiano, but that's just me. But anyway, he entered the portal, went home, started scheduling other visits. Rutgers is like, hold on, wait, let's make this happen. What do we got to do? Talked a couple things, obviously some NIL talk there. That's just the case with every portal kid. That's the case with high school kids now too. That's just how it works. Ended up going home, decided with his family, sat down after Christmas, sat down like right before the new year. I spoke with his family, and I'm told the number one factor in him choosing Rutgers, as much as NIL did play a factor, it wasn't NIL. It's the fact that he wanted to be closer to home. You can't really get much closer than Staten Island, New York. Like New Brunswick is right down the street. And yeah, there's a stupid toll, but about that. Other than that, it's about like what, a 20-minute drive, 25-minute drive. It's close. Tottenville's literally like in terms of Staten Island, that bridge, you cross that bridge, it's right there. Like I can see it from South Amboy, like just looking over the bay. So it is right there. But it came down to him wanting to come home, and he's now home. He gets his starting spot. I know people have questioned if he could be a 3-down lineman. I don't see why that's even in question. He's going to be a stud. And the more and more I think about it, like I was trying to say on Twitter, like, yeah, this is the best defensive end Rutgers has had since Kamoko Touré's freshman year in 2014. And then you outdid me a little bit. You're like, yeah, this is the best portal get they've ever had. And I'm looking, I'm like, oh shit, yeah, it is actually. Wow. So,
like if you're talking about like WAR, like wins above replacement, like you're probably looking at or not WAR, whatever the equivalent is. The PFF has like an F4 thing, but you got to imagine Ethan's going to have a bigger impact because he's the quarterback, and quarterbacks always have an outsized influence on those kind of numbers. But Eric O'Neill, I think, is the most talented guy they've landed.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of, his story is a little crazy too. Like he was another one of the COVID kids in high school. So like he started off at Tottenville, and then New York City shut down athletics his junior year, I believe, which is, as you can tell everybody, like your junior year is your most important by far of your high school career in terms of getting your name on the radar, visiting places. And if your name's not really on the radar as a junior, it's really tough to kind of get a foothold in your recruitment. And his junior year, New York City shuts down athletics, and he goes to play a year at Paramus Catholic, which not a bad place to showcase your talents, but he had to go to a different school. And then for his senior year, he went back to Tottenville, and he was just the kid who kind of slipped through the cracks. He ended up at LIU, just balled out there for 2 years. He redshirted his freshman year. But, I was looking into like some of the earliest mentions of him on our board, and Ryan Patty, who used to write for you, was the first one to talk about him. And he said Eric O'Neill was like, the question was, okay, I know this kid a little. Ryan, I told you PC was the spot in August. Paramus Catholic also got the tight end / D end from Tottenville. Name escapes me. Kid is a stud, in my opinion, blah, blah, blah. That's a different kid. And then Patty goes, Eric O'Neill, quite the crop of kids Paladins are reeling in. As for Martin, I think Rutgers has a serious shot. Okay, he was just referencing the name. Yeah. But, so he probably gets higher recruitment, or a bigger recruitment if, COVID doesn't blow up his high school career. But in terms of what he's done on the field since he's actually played college football, I don't think there's any kind of arguing who he is as a player. So his redshirt freshman year, he was a finalist for the Jerry Rice Award in college football. He had, damn it, I closed the tab. Let me open that back up.
I mean, he was a tight end in high school, first off.
Yeah. Like, you knew him as the tight end. Like, I remember when we first were talking about him, you're like, is that the same Eric O'Neill who's the tight end at Paramus? And then, like, you were going into it. We had to, like, compare, what these guys looked like in high school versus what he looked like in college. And we eventually figured out it was the same guy.
It is trippy. Like, you look at his profile real quick. Pull it up. Like, that's him in high school. And I was like, I'm pretty sure that's the same guy. And it's like, yeah, it looks a lot different. Like, yeah, definitely grew up a little bit. But yeah, no, he was a really good tight end in high school too. There's a chance he was going to end up at Syracuse, but then Syracuse kind of backed off. That was his only Power 5 offer out of high school, and he balled out at one of the Rutgers 7-on-7 camps. I remember with I don't know if he was playing with Tottenville or PC, I forget, but it was one of the junior year, so it might have been Paramus actually. He was balling out, and I was like, "Oh shit, like this kid's pretty good." But I believe Rutgers had a tight end already that cycle, if I recall. What was this 2019, 2021? I forget. Either way, doesn't matter. Besides the point.
I found his stats. So in 2022, he was a redshirt freshman for Long Island University FCS program.
Mhm.
He puts up 51 tackles. 21 of those were TFLs, 10 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, and a pass breakup. He was a Jerry Rice Award finalist, which is it's basically the Heisman of freshmen in the FCS. He's freshman All-American, first team All-Conference, defensive rookie of the year for the conference. He followed that up with a sophomore year where he put up an 82.0 grade, which is 28th out of 883 defensive ends, 80 tackles, 23.5 tackles for loss, 5.5 sacks, 1 forced fumble, and 4 pass breakups. He enters the portal. We talk about how we should go after him, and he ends up at James Madison. James Madison, he had just as good a season this year as he's ever had. He had a 90.4 PFF grade, which was 12th out of 856 defensive ends. He had really good run defense grades and pass rush grades. 86.3 run defense grade, 89.9 pass rush grade. On the season, 52 tackles, 19 tackles for loss, 13 sacks, 1 interception, which he returned for a touchdown, 3 pass breakups. This is the most impressive stat for me. He got stronger and better as the season went on. The final 6 games of the season, 12 tackles for loss and 10 sacks. So 10 of his 13 sacks came on the back 9 of the season, which as guys get nicked up, as guys get banged up, like that's just as much a testament to who this guy is mentally as it is physically. Like he was just like taking dude's souls down the stretch. And we have some of his more advanced numbers from PFF. So PFF has it's called a pass rush production grade. So it's the percentage of your snaps in which you got a sack, a hurry, or a pressure. So those 3 stats, the number of snaps you played. He was 17th in that metric. 11.1% of his snaps, he had a pressure, he had a sack, or he had a hurry. He was 8th in the country in hurries with 38. He was 9th in the country in pressures with 58. And this is out of 800 plus pass rushers. On the run side, he had the 48th he was ranked 48th in run stop rate. So that's just the percentage of run plays where you get a tackle at 9.1%, and he was 49th in run stops. So this is just a well-rounded player. I know people were kind of talking about his size not being great. Like 6'3", 250 is plenty big enough to play defensive end at this level, especially with the level of quickness that he has and intensity that he has. He's going to be an every down player for Rutgers. Anybody who says otherwise, I think, is not being fully honest with the situation.
Well, let's be honest too. Like he put up he could have been drafted this year if he really wanted to. He didn't have to. I'm actually very confident he would have been drafted in the later rounds, of course. He was a Group of 5 All-American. Like he's a full-blown stud. What he wants to do is he wants to come home, impress at a higher level, and potentially throw himself into that day 2 conversation, a day 1 conversation maybe. If you repeat those years at the Big Ten level this year, you're in day 1 conversation easily.
Yep.
Like he's very good, very talented. Just watching his tape too, even if he's not getting the sack, he's still creating the pressure that makes that quarterback move up. And these defensive tackles this year are going to eat, whether it be Doug Blue-Eli, whether it be Daryl Dengoe, whether it be Kashawn Griffin, Zaire Angway. Like I think there's going to be more tackles for loss. There's going to be more sacks for the interior of the defense this year than ever before, just because you have that edge rusher on the side. He is a phenomenal edge rusher. He just does everything right. The only thing, like I said before, like I don't think he's going to be doing his Israel Adesanya celebration with the bow and arrow anymore. But who knows? Maybe like you get hyped. You never know. But I could see Greg trying to shut that down pretty quickly.
I don't know. I saw a few coaches quote tweeting the Eric O'Neill announcement with the bow and arrow emoji. So
I know.
I think they got to just let him be him. Like if he's going to be that productive, you take a couple unsportsmanlike penalties throughout the year because of that. And he didn't even get one in the bowl game when he was right over the guy. Again, I can't be more excited about this commitment. There's not enough superlatives for the the great things that he does. So obviously this is a huge position of need. You were hearing coming into this offseason that they were prepared to make some serious moves to get a premier edge rusher on campus.
Yep.
And they sure as hell did, because this is a huge commitment. They add the second James Madison player this offseason. We've been talking about Lyle Hemphill offseason as a potential DC addition. I think this only kind of makes that a stronger case. Not saying that he has to be the defensive coordinator now that we've landed two of his players, but I certainly think it makes it an easier transition for him. Not only with the players telling the other players what the coach is all about, but also, knows how certain guys can fit in his scheme. So saying all that, have you heard anything else about the defensive coordinator position, or is it still radio silence?
No, that's how Greg operates. We won't know until something like significant happens, whether it be an interview occurs or even then, like he keeps this stuff like all under wraps. Like he's just very tight-lipped with stuff like this. You mentioned Chris Laurenti the other day. I think that's an interesting name. I also think it could potentially be an NFL guy, and I think that's why it's also taking so long. NFL season ends this weekend. So I think I think Tem Lukabu is a serious candidate. I think Chris Laurenti is probably a serious candidate. Lyle Hemphill, you'd be insane not to consider, especially because money-wise, it's probably going to be the cheapest option for you, too, and probably one of the better ones, too. He's only making $200,000 at James Madison. What were they paying Harris Simiak? I don't expect him to pay that same money again, but like 1.2, 1.3, something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, so he was making serious money. So, I mean, and it's one of the higher paying jobs in Power 5 or in college football in general. So we'll have to wait and see what happens there, but I'm intrigued. I mean, all those names are proven track records at lower levels, of course, but it's kind of what you have to do. That's the up and comers. Could you go sneak Corey Heatherman? Maybe they're still negotiating with Heatherman. Who knows, really? Because that's what happened with Shiraka, to be honest. So it will be interesting.
I think that would be a lot tougher. I don't think money-wise we would want to. I haven't seen Heatherman's new contract, but if it's structured anyway, like his old one was structured, it probably says that he has to pay the full balance, which was previously about $1 million that we'd have to buy him out for. Now it's probably more like 3 or 4. So that on top of what you have to pay him, that seems prohibitive. The $1 million didn't seem prohibitive because, you've seen Rutgers be okay with canning a guy like Sean Gleason, who had a year left on his contract for $1 million, and then hire Kirk Soraka for 1.4. Where do you think Rutgers stands currently now that they have O'Neal in the fold with defensive end recruiting? Because like we talked about, it seemed like they were really hot to trot on Bradley Weaver, who, we know that there's one guy who's going to be on campus this upcoming weekend. There's probably going to be more. But do you think they try and add a second starting level defensive end to go along with Eric O'Neal?
I think they're going to try. I don't know if it's a guarantee for certain that they're going to do this, but they're going to try to at least. I know they like Jordan Thompson. They think he has a high ceiling, but I don't personally know how high of a ceiling he has. I think he's been in the program long enough that you kind of know what he is. We know they've reached out to several others. Bradley Weaver's one that I would keep a really close eye on. I think he makes a lot of sense at Ohio. I wouldn't be shocked if he was on campus this weekend, to be honest with you. So it's just something to keep a close eye on. I would say more than likely, I shouldn't say more than likely. I'd say there's a good shot they probably add another defensive end. They realized it this season. I keep saying it over and over again. It's not about playing 40, 50 snaps as a defensive end or defensive lineman anymore. It's about rotating guys in, but not just rotating guys in, rotating quality guys in. So if you could rotate Eric O'Neal and Jordan Thompson, Jordan Walker, I feel like I'm missing something. I think one of the young guys is going to probably play some snaps too, whether it be Caden Edwards or Robbie Johnson Jr. maybe. Digibro Abdul Rahman's going to be there too. I could see them. I think they probably will add another one, to be honest with you, when it's all said and done. Who is that person? I don't know. I think the heavy favorite right now would probably be Bradley Weaver from Ohio, who we mentioned the other day. But you get two of those guys, and you have a pretty good. You get another one. Like you get Bradley Weaver, you got a damn good defensive line this year. And they still want to add a tackle as well, so a third tackle. So it is kind of a whole rebuilt defense this offseason, but so far so good when it comes to the rebuilding plan.
Yeah, you can't say enough good things about how well that they've done in the portal this offseason. You're giving them shit over the years for not targeting enough players, in our opinions, in the portal. And I think we saw that, rear its ugly head this year when we dealt with some injuries. I don't think they're going to let that happen again. And good on them for not only identifying that, but also really kind of course correcting there. And I do think part of that was NIL. And now that we have rev sharing, that alleviates a lot of that stress. NIL is still important. I don't want people to think like now that rev sharing is a thing, NIL is just not important at all. Because everything NIL related is kind of like dessert, whereas the rev sharing is like the meal, where if you got enough dessert, it can lure some people in. Let's just say that. But
I will say it's also not just rev sharing too. Like Rutgers has done or I shouldn't say Rutgers. Greg Schiano has done a very good job of building NIL for the Rutgers football program. It's not easy by any means at Rutgers, but he has done a very good job of building a solid piggy bank for what he needs. And he like you said, he's very open to the portal again. This is a guy that, 2 seasons ago was saying, I'm just going to use it for plug and play, and that's about it, just to fill in the gaps. It's no longer filling in the gaps because this is taking over high school recruiting, unfortunately for the high school kids. But this is just the way of the world now for college football. You need to hit the portal hard. You need to do more than just fill gaps. You have to essentially build teams, and it's a new roster every single year. And we've heard Pike will say it time and time again. This is just how college athletics is going to operate going forward. So either adapt and I think I've said it actually on here, adapt or die. And Craig Schiano chose to adapt. So if you don't like the way something is, change the way you think about it. Boom, Schiano quote.
Yep, that is. That's like 80% of a Schiano quote. I think he says
something like
change the way you think about it, or you could just stop doing it or something like that. Yeah. Obviously, he's not going to stop doing it.
He's also got that really other good quote that what the hell was it? It was there's 2 things every man in life thinks they can do, and it's barbecue and or grill and coach football. Yeah, and I was like, that's a good one. Like that's true.
It is.
Like there's too many people I know that like think they can grill, and it's like, oof, dude, your steak is, ugh.
Yeah, this is the either not cooked at all or charred black.
It's like, dude, this is a hockey puck. What are we doing? Like, jeez. Anyway.
Well, a couple of big commitments from this weekend or from this week. I'm so with the holidays. I've treated like every day like it was a Saturday the last 10 days. So, big recruiting weekend. It sounds like upcoming. We'll have more on that as we get information. But stay tuned because you never know when something might break. Stay tuned to the boards and your podcast feed.
Jet Elad, like you said, this weekend. I don't think we really touched on him too much. UNLV DB will be on campus this weekend. I expect them to lock him up, to be honest, and I expect us to be doing a pod this weekend at some point, or maybe Monday, depending on when he does commit. But I am very confident in that one. What else? There's probably going to host a couple different dudes. Basketball's tonight, so stay tuned for that. Indiana, tough one, not an easy one. Some talk that Omar Ballo might not play because he's too busy drinking, I guess. For reference, he got caught at a bar the night before a game the other day and didn't play the game the day after the game. So something to monitor. And real quick, Keyshawn Fisher, Michigan 2025, well, former Michigan native that plays at Overtime Elite right now, 2025 guard, will be visiting campus very soon, he told me. Doesn't have a set date yet. Doesn't have a ton of offers either, so not. So here's the issue. Like when he was playing at Michigan, he was kind of an under the radar guy. Now he's an Overtime Elite. Schools are starting to kind of kick up a little bit in terms of his recruitment. So someone to monitor. 2025 might not be done, and who knows? Maybe you'll see a Louisville-esque type commitment where he comes to campus and signs, and it's all over the jumbotron. So that's what Louisville did yesterday with the number 1 point guard in the nation. So maybe they do it with a shooting guard from Michigan. Something to keep an eye on.
That's crazy. I didn't know about that.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. There's a wild video too. Like I didn't know you could even do that, and then I realized he's signed technically. So I guess you could do whatever.
All right. Well, exciting weekend. We will have you covered with everything on the boards and the podcast. I want to thank you once again for listening for another edition of the Knight Report podcast. So for me and Richie, Mike signing off. That was terrible. Whatever. See you guys.